Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined by my co-host again, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. We are all of the above and probably a lot more.
So probably say good morning and happy Cinco de Mayo.
That's right. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, and what was it? The tendency is to think that this is a celebration of Mexican Independence Day, but it's not.
No, it marks a battle where they beat an outnumbered. There were the Mexicans beat a force of Napoleon-led soldiers, and they were outnumbered about 3-2 and won a huge battle. So now in Mexico, it's only celebrated in one province, one state. They have states like we do, called Puebla, and nowhere else. But it's a big thing here.
Yeah, it's once again
deals on margaritas.
That's right. once again, the French do another brilliant job with their military.
Yeah, they got greedy in that case. It was they were trying to hold the fort, and they wanted to get be more. They wanted to make sure that they couldn't help the Confederacy and so forth. The Mexicans were like, we don't want to help that, and so they were trying to set up staging grounds to bring stuff to the south from Mexico, and that's what was stopped. So,
yeah, I mean, I posted this thing this morning about the freebies or the discounts for Cinco de Mayo. Of course, most of them are, as you just alluded to, it's like the margaritas, they're discounted drinks and all these kind of things, which don't do me a world anything at all.
Don't help you at all.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of the restaurants aren't even in this area. I'm like, well, we'll see. Not that I'm a big Cinco de Mayo person. I just never know when it's going to fall. But
I have basketball tonight till like 9:30, so I'm thinking about stopping for Taco Bell on the way home.
Yeah. So, and yet yesterday was the day, that if you have the Taco Bell app, they were giving away like some kind of free taco.
Yeah. That's just terrible.
Yeah.
We'll figure out something.
I don't know. I mean, you saw that I went out and I got that free McFlurry yesterday. It's like, sometimes I sit there and I have to do that cost benefit analysis. It's like, how much do I really want to go get this free item off this app versus driving to the location to do it? How much gas am I expending to get? Is it really worth it? And all that. But it turned out
the thing about people, they drive a long way to get 4 cents a gallon cheaper gas. Okay, well, you have most people, it's like a 12, 13 gallon tank. So, how far will you drive to save 50 cents on a, $40 purchase?
Right. That's I am somewhat guilty of that in a way.
Yeah, me too. It's just like you really look at the economics of it, it's not good.
Yeah, the gas station I go to, it's a little bit cheaper. It's a Marathon, but they have a points system. So you get points for going there, and if you go there on Saturdays in May, for example, it's double points, and it takes a lot of points, but eventually you get to where you'll get a 50 cent a gallon discount. So they kind of work towards it. I've done it once, but my wife won't go there. She's been with me like once, and she hates the place because it tends to be crowded, and it's a really small station, and people, it's just people get very impatient and she gets nervous having all these people wait while we gas up and all this stuff. And I'm like, so I'm the one who gasses up the cars unless she's at Costco, where she's always, which is always kind of the deal.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything like that close by, where, the closest Costco to get gas is like 30 miles away. Definitely not, never. The economics
hard to figure that into your plans. I've got to be 30 miles from running out before,
right.
And have time to drive to Frederick.
That's right. All right, back to the news. So there's a lot of stuff on Biden this week, and he continues to provide lots of things to talk about. We'll start off, with this refugee cap. I mean, he initially was going to keep, Trump's lower cap, which was about 15,000. Got a lot of pressure and blowback from the left on this, and he's going to go like 62.5. and then eventually to 125 and all of this. But this is while we're still in the midst of this border crisis issue, which he hasn't resolved. Though I will say, I don't know if you saw this. I saw this morning. The administration, I guess, had put out a picture of one of the facilities along the border, which was like completely empty. It's like, yeah. So where did you move them all to? So anyway,
right. Did they die, Joe? Were you killing them? No. Who knows, right?
Yeah. So what's going on with all this?
So the border cap thing that is managed news, right? He said he was going to do it, right? Then he just waited a while to do it till they, resolve some other stuff. Now he does it, and they can say, "Oh, the left has pushed him over, and he's listened to the immigrant rights groups and so forth." And this is all timed and arranged. It's not, there was no big we pushed him over the persuasion point, right? They just didn't have their act together, which has been the case with a lot of the immigration policy in particular, right? They did not understand the circumstances and did not understand the consequences of the things they wanted to do. So, is 62,000 people 62.5 going to kill us to let into the country? No, but it doesn't. But, the idea that Biden's way of thinking has been brought around to the correct way by the, onslaught of refugee groups pounding on his door. They like those kind of narratives because it looks like the activists are being rewarded, right? Keep being an activist and keep protesting and so forth because you're getting your way. It's working. So, but that's all this is. This is storytelling. It's not, they were always going to make it 62.5. There's no, there's not an ideological read in the entire Democrat Party that would argue for keeping it what it was.
Right. I mean, you're correct on that. I mean, the thing is that we knew that Trump's cap was going to go away. I mean, that they were going to lift this thing, at some point in time anyway. It was just a question of exactly when they were going to do it. People who are on the far left, I mean, they wanted that sooner rather than later. But Biden did have this other issue on the border, trying to corral that narrative before doing this. But I do think that, it wasn't really that the left, I guess, as you say, I mean, not necessarily that they convinced him to do this per se. I mean, he just sped up the plan, and in essence, for now, it satisfies them. But we knew that this was coming. Now, one of the interesting things I saw, which is just that there are some of these unaccompanied minors heading our way. They have, I guess, we've been notified, Montgomery County and then DC, they're sending some people up our way, which once again, not necessarily unsurprising. This is a result of the Biden policies of what's going on. But I'm kind of wondering, how, they have to do something with these people. If they're going to let them in, they got to put them somewhere. How I wonder kind of how our other states, other jurisdictions going to react, when they start seeing these numbers of these people starting to come in. The more liberal areas probably are fine, but the more conservative areas are probably going to be like, what the heck's going on?
Well, there's been a couple of states who have said, don't send them here. They won't be allowed here. Like, go become a citizen and come see us. Right. So, there's already some pushback on it. And, you have a situation where, the employers are good with it because they can't find people to work already. Right. So if you come in, I think if, the interesting one to see, the interesting Trump policy to see if they hold in place is the public charge rule, right? Where Trump said, if you're coming in, you can't be a public charge. You can't come in and claim a bunch of benefits, right? If you can't provide for yourself, you shouldn't be coming here. So, I don't think that will last, but that's really the rule that matters here.
Yeah, I don't. It's still, we're still trying to figure out this border thing. Exactly what's Kamala doing on this. It seems that
trying to stay away from it.
It seems that Biden is giving her you're going to be in charge of this, you're going to be in charge of that, but she hasn't done diddly squat on the
She
border.
hasn't done anything. Yeah. See, to me, I mean, he's saying, he's thinking of running again, right? Because it's what you have to do. You can't come in as a lame duck, right? You have to say, yeah, I'm planning to run again. But I mean, clearly this is being done. This whole thing is set up to set her up to win in 24, right? And like, she's got these things, if she goes down and does average work on the border, it will be lauded, ever more gloriously, as Father said at Mass Sunday, until, she's a shoo-in candidate, right? The whole point of all this is to give her accomplishments, because otherwise she's nothing but, the woman who yelled at Brett Kavanaugh and, was the most liberal voting member of the Senate. And, this is her resume. This is her chance. And she's blowing it. She doesn't seem to care about this at all. It's not just the issue, right? I don't even know, like, what is her level of concern about immigration. It's the whole idea of doing work, going down and talking to people and having meetings and actually doing what is involved here. And I don't see that happening. And I see her, and I can't tell if she's reluctant or just dismissive, just, I don't need to be there, screw it, right? Or she doesn't, feel comfortable or that she can take this on. But the work is not getting done. And at some point, people like me are pointing this out now, but at some point she's going to be running against other people who want to be president, and they're going to point it out. And she's going, you're not going to be able to do anything about that. And I don't think that's going to help her, because I mean, the record she's building right now is not good.
Right. And before I answer that, I'm going to say, so Bob has chimed in, call it the mumbles and giggles shell game for the distribution of unaccompanied minors on and now well off the border. Yep. So
that's right.
Straight on there. So yeah, you're right. This is Harris's chance. I mean, the idea here, I thought, was to prep her and to create the image of Kamala that she could be the next president of the United States, give that image of leadership and things like this.
Yeah, competence. I got something done. I made a problem go away. There's no reaching out trying to do that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem that and the idea that to a certain extent, though, I think Biden also is trying to offload some things that he doesn't want to be tied to, like on the border, but to give her some responsibility. Okay, now here it is. You own this. Here's your chance. But then, as you say, she doesn't do anything. So then, as talk starts to surface about this, whether or not that talk that starts surfacing by 2022, once we get a couple of years into Biden, or it comes a little bit later, where's the track record? What is, this is
right. Your track record is you punted. You had a chance and you didn't do anything with it. I mean, that's worse than failing,
Right. And we know, having watched, the Democrats after this last go around, that they're as willing as anybody else to attack each other, because they're trying to step over each other, and they're willing to crush a few people on the way to get to the top. So it would, she would face competition, and it will be brutal, and she'll have a track record of nothingness to show, and she'll become extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, right now she's Anthony Brown. Don't you remember him?
Right,
yeah,
right.
Anthony Brown was the guy who was he was assigned by Governor Glendening, right?
Hogan. Oh, yeah, Glendening, right? No, right.
That's how Hogan got elected. Was he ran against Anthony Brown, and Anthony Brown was trying to make it.
It's O'Malley. It's O'Malley.
O'Malley. That's right.
Yeah.
Governor O'Malley, Maryland.
I'm like, who was in between there? That was it. Yeah, it was O'Malley.
he was memorable. But the governor appointed Anthony Brown, so people that don't follow all this, to make the Obamacare website for Maryland, which was a big Obamacare state, a lot of high enrollment, participation, and so forth. And they never got the site to work. And then the federal government went to them and said, well, we gave you a bunch of money to build a website, and given that we see no website, you need to give us that money back. So, Maryland had to stroke them a check. And this was a guy who was being set up for, big things in Democrat politics. And he ends up running against Larry Hogan, who is, a Republican in a state that's what is it, like 6 or 7 to 1 Democrat? And he won, and Hogan's now in his second term. I mean,
Right.
Republicans control the state house in Maryland. No one knows that, but they do.
Yeah, I mean
You really can't tell with Hogan because he's pretty darn close to being a Democrat. But
yeah. Well, I mean, Hogan has governed like a Republican can govern. Really, the only way a Republican can govern in Maryland because the state legislature is so lopsided,
Right.
against him. So he's, in that sense. But I do know a lot of Republicans in Maryland who are, just disillusioned with him, particularly because of all the attacks on Trump, obviously.
Right.
But I mean, I remember speaking to Hogan when he was a candidate, when he first launched the campaign. We talked about that. But he did not make that a centerpiece of his campaign.
Right.
He was
Everyone
smart.
else just said, "Hey, this dude's incompetent. He had one job."
Right. I mean, and as you said, he was. This is the thing. I mean, Anthony Brown, lieutenant governor, African American, Army vet, type of thing like that. He had kind of on paper the resume that the Democrats said this is a shoo-in. But because of that blunder and because of the number of taxes, even small taxes that the O'Malley administration pushed through on Marylanders, Hogan was able to use that, very effectively, because that even Democrats, your kind of middle of the road Democrats were tired, when they hear that there were 46 tax increases under the O'Malley administration, even their ears lit up a little bit. And Hogan was just this extremely likable guy. Brown could never get that. I mean, he brought in Obama and all these people, and their crowds were horrible. You bring in Barack Obama, and
this is 7 years ago.
Yeah,
this is not now, right? This is
right.
2013 or so. So 2014. So
well, right. Yeah, it was 2014 and 2018 were the election years. So you bring Obama. I mean, for heaven's sakes, you're bringing in these heavyweights. And your crowds were small.
Yeah, 2014, 2 years out of being president, right?
He could generate zero enthusiasm. He went down the tubes just like Kathleen Kennedy Townsend did with Bob Ehrlich. I mean, so I mean,
it's for a lot of the same reasons. She just couldn't demonstrate minimal competence.
Right. Right. I mean, it'll be an open race in 2022. It'll be interesting to see how it shapes up because Republicans are they're looking for the strong candidate, and I'm not sure where they're going to find it. But the lieutenant governor declined to run, which was probably the best decision, giving others that probably would have a better shot at it. But I wouldn't be surprised if the pendulum doesn't swing back in 2022. But you never know. Maryland. Maryland, you find the right Republican candidate that can kind of do that middle of the roadish thing. It's possible. It's still a possibility out there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be an interesting time as we go down there to see exactly what happens. But Harris has definitely not distinguished herself for anything at this point in time. And that'll also once again label vice presidents as not really having any authority or not being able to do anything,
right?
And yet if something happens to Biden, it goes to Harris, right?
There she is.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I mean, one of the things I do want to talk about here too is just Biden and these some of these gaffes he's had in the last few days. Just more head scratching. I put on the list what he had said the other day about. Those who earn less than $400,000, they won't pay a single penny in taxes.
Right, left out an important word there.
Yeah, but then apparently, I guess he's he's talking with the press, and he says to go to vaccines.gum. He talks instead of the CDC, he says the CCD, and you're just like. How
CCD, which is when Biden was growing up, CCD is
aren't you just
Catholic Sunday school, right? CCD was what they used to call in the old days Catholic Sunday School, right? CCD was, that's what they called it, Catholic something, whatever. I don't remember even what it stood for, but the old ball, when he was coming up, that's what that was called. So that's like that he landed on that one's kind of interesting. Also,
yeah,
I guess
that's good. I hadn't thought about that, but that actually is funny. Yeah, I remember from my Catholic friends. I remember they talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's apparently a pretty sustained movement going on now by Catholic bishops to get him and all the members of his administration who support abortion to not stop taking communion, to not give them communion. So, they've talked about doing stuff like this before, but I think they have the majority of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops behind it now. So that would be him and Pelosi and a lot of other people.
I mean, do these politicians like that? I mean, do they even attempt to take communion? With all this stuff. I
don't know if he tries to take communion because, his wife was married. Now he was widowed when they got married, right? But she had to get divorced, and so I don't know if that ever got cleaned up in the church, right? Because you have to, you got to get the church to approve getting married if you're doing it under those circumstances.
Yeah, so I've always kind of wondered whether or not they look at this and because especially when you're the president of the United States, when you're a high profile politician and you're getting followed around by the media. I mean, if you go to church, they're going to want to know. They're going to want to follow everything that they can in there. And
and it's like I guess Politico wrote the other day. This extremely Catholic president. It's like, well, no, he's not an extremely Catholic president if he supports abortion. He's not. There's no supporting abortion and being an extremely Catholic president.
Yeah, whoever wrote that for Politico needs to talk to some actual Catholics,
right.
who actually understand what the tenets of the religion are, but it's typical of the media there. I mean, that just sounds like something, once again, Politico would want to paint, Biden in a good term, right? I mean, extremely Catholic, tell people out there that, he's a good religious guy,
a lot more decent than Trump.
Right.
No,
exactly.
No, he's not really, I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, Bob says that he remembers his CCD days well from his formative years in central New Jersey.
There you go.
So now, Bob, you got to tell us what it actually stood for, since Brian. I think I knew at one time when I was like in 8th grade, because I had a lot of Catholic friends that had left, that come out of Catholic schools, but it would be beyond me now in my old brain to remember anything like that. So Bob put that into the notes for us and all that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, if I'm the press, if I'm a voter, once again, I'm just getting a little bit worried. It's like, here we are, just, a little past 100 days here. And, he's talking to the press and he's just falling all over himself to try to keep the phraseology straight.
Right. Saying no one pays taxes 400,000 below. Democrats kind of have that goal. They sort of have this fantasy that, we can just make the rich pay for everything and that they'll keep doing it. The rich will agree to this great bargain, and not try to change any of the terms, because they don't ever try to change the terms of anything. It had everything to do with how they got rich. Right. So, that it's not going to work that way. There's going to be, everybody has to pay. I think that's part of the thing is like, Romney got pilloried, probably cost him the election in 2012, making the point that, you're up to almost half the people in the country pay no federal income tax. So they don't really have skin in the game, right? It's real easy to vote to spend when you're not paying. It doesn't cost you a dime, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've always known with politicians, particularly Democrats. I mean, it's just like, it may be people's money as such, but they have little or no skin in the game. They don't see this as affecting them greatly, particularly if they're making a lot. A lot of them have pretty fair stockpile of assets and things like that. So raising, for them to even if they were paying a little bit more in taxes, it has a minimal effect on them. But they always fail to understand that the people that it does hit in large measure are these entrepreneurs, the people who created jobs, created businesses, and things like this. And you have you're taxing them, you're completely disincentivizing them to create the growth, to create the things that generate the money for the economy to begin with.
They don't believe in incentives. They don't believe that behavior is incentivized by government action. Like it's like the same thing with the border, right? Well, if you say, we're repudiating the Trump policies and we're going to settle the asylum cases in the United States and we're going to be a lot more friendly about it and we're going to quadruple the cap, right? Then what do people who were thinking about coming here do? Do they say now is the time to come, or I definitely need to wait a while, right? It's now is the time to come, right? The friendly administration won. Okay, so they don't understand. Like you painted this picture of what you're going to do, and people responded. Oh well, but we asked them not to come yet. It's like they're not. It's not going to be that fine tuned, right? They see incentives to go. They see this being dealt with in the old way again, which allows them to wait in the United States and. Everything's on our side of the border instead of their side of the border. And they did what they were incentivized to do. When the thing Trump, comes in, American Jobs and Tax Cuts Act, right? It incentivized, they had lowered depreciation from 5 years to 1 year. So everybody went out and bought whatever equipment you needed for your factory, store, whatever. If you can depreciate it in 1 year, that was the time to do it. Set off a spending frenzy, right? Drove stocks as higher than they've ever been, so forth, and lowered corporate taxes that made us bigger, better competitors abroad, right? Which meant it was worth investing in companies to make things in America to sell abroad, which I think pretty much everyone agrees that's a good idea, right? We get good jobs, we get a market for our products, right? But we don't want that anymore because it worked. Now we're going to pay people to stay home and so forth.
We have a comment from somebody on YouTube who says, well, he's got a couple of comments, but I might as well read them. What is conservatism is not grievance peddling and stolen election nonsense? Question. People like you are bottom feeders. Maybe we can add that to the list. Good luck trying to win that election. I'm a proud bottom feeder. I mean,
heck yeah, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, national election by 2022, we will have the House back for sure. Maybe the Senate, and you better watch out in 2024 with the presidency. So, watch your words there, talking about winning national elections, because stuff is going to come home to roost here in 2022. Now, you're talking about we're talking about incentives or disincentives and whatnot. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit before I go back to some of the other items. I just read in the Wall Street Journal. On their op-ed page about Montana. So Governor Gianforte, who was former representative, he basically came and he notified that they're going to they're no longer going to participate. By the end of June, they're going to separate themselves from that federal unemployment extra payments, the $300 extra a week. It was interesting because apparently Montana has already got a pretty hefty unemployment top rate anyway. It was $572 was the maximum rate, which is pretty darn good compared to a lot of other states. I mean, I think Spencer's in Arizona and he said it was like 200. So you add if you take the maximum and add the 300, they calculated that people would average $21.80 an hour to not work. Right. It's like, holy cow. I mean, that's more than a heck of a lot of people make. And they had 25,000 people collect unemployment, this first week of May. They had 14,000 job openings on the state website, according to the state. Their unemployment rate is only 3.8%. There is no reason, Governor Gianforte is correct. There is no reason for them to give them the extra money. They need people to get out there and work. So they're going to take some of that COVID money, and they're going to offer $1,200 to people who get a job basically this week and hold it for 4 weeks. And then after that, you prove that, you will get money. Now, that's a much better way of spending the money. Say, go get a job and we'll give you basically a bonus for getting a job and holding that for a minimum of a month. Right. That's a much better way of doing it. It's not, I don't necessarily think it's the best thing, but it's a better way than just giving you $300 extra to sit at home.
Around the house.
Plus, we have states that are now saying, oh, by the way, you're going to actually have to prove that you're looking for work, which basically got suspended during this whole thing. So maybe we're going to go back to something, but there's so many people just sitting at home, just collecting that extra money. I mean, and I just don't know what the end of this is with the Democrats.
Did you see the Labor Department's reaction to this?
No.
So they asked the Secretary of Labor about this, and his spokesman said, it'll hurt the most vulnerable the worst. And we've seen no evidence that there's a shortage of workers, but driven by this extended enhanced benefit. Just like, this is not happening. This problem doesn't exist. Why are you guys trying? It's in that story. Go look at the bottom of the story. It's like, there's a lot of that in it. The Biden administration, like they say, well, the border problems are all Trump's fault. And, no, they weren't. The border was cleaned up when you took over, and then you messed it up. And that's not Trump's fault. That is the pursuit of your policies that have caused it, right? And they don't mind the bald-faced lie and just make you try to figure it out. But yeah, no, there's, and all Jim Forte talks about in the story is all the people who are coming up to him saying they can't find anybody to hire. So, there's your evidence there, Secretary.
Well, the thing is that, look, I mean, even the liberal media, the mainstream media, whatever you want to call them. I mean, there are stories. I've seen lots of local stories on whether or not it's Channel 9 or Channel 4 or 7 or whatever. They're talking to local businesses who are trying, now that reopenings are taking place, they're trying to find workers. I mean. Yeah. And these restaurants in particular, they're apologizing to the patrons for the wait and for other things, saying, "Sorry, we can't find enough people to run the restaurant now."
Right. A lot of things are closing because they can't find people to work there.
Yeah, I mean this is absolutely crazy. So these these businesses that suffered under the closings, they're like, okay, great, now we can reopen. But if they can't staff them appropriately, then it's almost as bad as being, closed or partially open, because you can't maximize the business to the point where you need to do it. It's unbelievable. And there are people that are just, after being off this long, they're not going back to that line of work. They found other work, or they're doing other things. And so, kind of the little flow that we had of people who would kind of naturally gravitate to that line of work, they're not going to do it anymore. They've decided that there's other things that they want to do or can do.
But there should be some people moving into that too, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, there will be, but it looks like, right, as long as the government is kind of dangling that carrot out there a little bit, so saying, we're just going to give you this money. Anybody who does the basic math says, no, I mean, it's like, I was making $12 an hour doing this. Even if your state is not as generous as Montana is with the top rate, you're still likely to make more than that by sitting at home. Yeah. But I'm glad that the states are actually starting to say, and I think it's happening mostly in the red states, where they're saying, but you're gonna have to start proving that you're looking for a job. So right. I'm glad that they're doing that, because that'll help speed up the return to the to work for some of these people, because they have been just lazing around, probably playing video games and
my dad told me when I was a kid, he goes, if you ever get out of the habit of going somewhere 5 days a week and having to work every day, it will be almost impossible to get back into it, right? And so I think that's part of the thing. Huh?
I vouch for that 100%, because after all that crap happened at AIM and everything like that, and we forced to, we went to home, and which actually, which if you think about it, was kind of funny, because it was just ahead of its time, because we would have been forced to work at home. But believe you me, the idea of me now trying to return to an office several days a week. Yeah. I mean, the one guy that I'm working with, on this financial thing, he talks every once in a while about, going to a workspace and being that he likes to do that because he was used to doing it. He's good. He's a good, probably 15, 20 years younger than I am. I'm thinking, like, I don't know. It's like, I might have to quit.
Yeah.
Because I'm not
I
quite
mean, it's
sure.
like
Even if the place is 5 miles down the road, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore.
yeah, 5 whole miles. That's right.
Yeah.
That's forever,
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you got to get dressed, you got to go out in the weather. I mean,
I can't wear, I mean, like, look, I'm wearing short pants, right? We can do things, and I do a lot of other things around the house and stuff like this, including managing to get a shirt stuck in my washing machine agitator, somehow out of my wife has never seen this in all the years we've been married. She's never seen any piece of clothing ever get stuck in the agitator. I do the wash. She comes home and she says, "You couldn't wait one more day till I got home, right?"
That's always smartest with laundry.
But I've gone online. I found people had bed sheets stuck in there. Okay, I'm trying to find a way to get my way out of the hole there I had with her. Okay, so here we have the answer from Bob about CCD.
Okay,
Confraternity of Christian Doctrine.
There you
Date
go.
16th century, but meant in modern times for Catholics from K through 12 in public rather than Catholic schools. So there we have it. There is no way I would have ever remembered that first word. So thank you, Bob, for doing that. That's a good little education there for me as well, and all that. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing about what we are now. I do want to go back and talk about Joe and Jill, just because they went. There was all this video of them going to this school talking with these students, and we just loved it, right? These kids are saying virtual learning sucked.
Yeah, and they're like, we ate. You can eat, you can sleep, you can fool the teachers. Some days it worked, some day it didn't work. I mean, I think everybody agrees that it's not ideal, right? I mean, even the teachers who are trying to preserve it, acknowledge that in classroom is better, right? Especially the ones that now you have to do both, right? That seems really confusing to me. I'm just watching my kids' classes, right? And so they'll have classes, and she's basically got one program going for the people who are there, and a similar but not the same program going for people who are learning virtually. So, and a lot of kids, a surprising number of kids in Fairfax County, I think it's still 40% or so, did not go back, don't want the go back option. They get staying home all year. So, it's a different thing out there. I think, school systems were like given a task that they never imagined and not a whole lot of time to figure it out. And yeah, it's not good, but it needs to be eliminated as soon as possible, just for, a variety of other reasons that don't all have to do with the quality of the education involved, and get kids back into school. Right. But, I'm glad that he heard that. I mean, we should not pretend that this is okay or that this is an option that we would use under any but the most dire circumstances. And we are, past the dire circumstance at this point. Right.
Exactly.
We have therapeutics, we have vaccines. We know it's got a 99.99% survival rate, even higher amongst kids. Right. So, I think there's still about 240 people in the country, 18 and under, who have died of COVID, and all had comorbidities, every single one of them. Right. It just doesn't kill.
So, yeah. And I was right. And I was just reading the class, something about schools and this whole, what they call often Zoom in a room, and one of the kids, they said, well, it's like, it's a waste of time. I don't want to go back to that, where you have kids, but you're still on Zoom because the teacher's on Zoom. You just have a monitor or somebody there kind of watching you. They talked to another kid, though, who actually got, that was there, and then they had lunch and spoke to another kid. And he was really excited. He said, I loved it. I think the kid was in 6th grade. He said, that whole thing, he was so excited. He says, that whole thing exceeded all of his expectations. And to me, it's funny, but it's sad at the same time, that the kids, their social, their needs, that aspect has been, completely taken away from them with all of this. which I want to lead into quickly, just for a little bit, talking about how we have this revelation that the CDC was talking with the American Federation of Teachers, I guess it was, and Randy Weingarten about school reopening thing. Well, we know where Randy Weingarten is going to be on this because we know where the teachers union has been on this.
Yeah, it's also catches her in a lie because she said, repeatedly and in commercials even, no one's done more to get kids back in the classroom than American Federation of Teachers. Like, no, well, if by doing more you mean talking to CDC and they're not recommending it for well beyond the time when they should have been recommending it, then yeah. But otherwise, no, right? She just bald-faced lied there.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It just, even on a headline basis, it just kind of looks bad to a lot of people. I think when they say the CDC consulted with these people who, if you look across the country, who've been the biggest blockades to getting kids back in school.
And why is if the CDC, the other thing to think about is so the exchange with Dr. Fauci and Rand Paul, right? And, Fauci kept saying, you keep talking about this as a liberties thing, and I'm talking about it as a public health thing. Okay, so it's a public health thing. That's the only part of the problem you're going to, claim expertise on and do anything to address. Okay, that's fine. That's what you are. You're an epidemiologist or whatever, right? You're not a school board guy. You're not looking at pedagogy and learning problems caused by this and so forth. Okay. If that's what you're doing, then, why are you calling the teachers? The teachers aren't science. If we're going to stick to the science, the teachers aren't science. The teachers are an interest group. So you're admitting that your process is politicized, that you're telling us stick with the science. The science is whatever your political masters tell you it is.
Right. So remind me again, where is your school system and how are your kids doing going back? They've gone back, right?
They are back 4 days a week, and they're supposed to be back 5 days a week in the fall, the superintendent's already said. And he's also telling all the sports people, you'll be doing things on your normal schedule next year. So
are your kids happy to be back?
Oh, absolutely. My son had petitioned his principal to come back when they were only allowing you 2 days a week. He was saying, will you make an exception for me so I can go 4 days a week?
Good for Artie.
Yeah.
You look at these and says, yeah, they've learned well from the parents, right? They understand.
The money's involved in a lot of stuff at school that's really been hurt by this,
Yeah.
Like he does the school news. He's the school newscaster. So.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
You got there's stuff in the genes there, Brian.
Yeah. He can do stuff in one take too. He does these like news read-ins and stuff, and he'll have this long script that he also writes, and he will read it off perfectly with not one stutter. Done. Next. And it's like, that's incredible. That's hard to do.
If he's not in school and you can't make it to the show, I can just bring Marty in.
Yeah, he won't mess up. Puts him ahead of me.
We'll get a much younger perspective.
There you go.
All right, I do have to ask you though about this whole Rudy Giuliani story, because it was kind of stuff was happening last week, when we were doing the show, and then since then, we have the Washington Post and the New York Times and NBC News. They all had to go back and issue corrections on the story about Rudy being warned by the FBI about all this Russian involvement, stuff like this. I think this is perfect for you to comment on.
Well, as Howard Kurtz pointed out, this story was attributed to one unnamed source, one well-placed source. Okay. So, even if you're going to allow the practice of running stories whose only sources are anonymous, don't you at least have to have two sources or two confirmations of the, most people, the rule is, guy number one tells you something, you must find a 2 and a 3 to say that that's correct before you can run it. Since you're not going to put anybody's name with it and tell what their perspective or ability to know or, is, you're not telling us like this, some guy in, Yakima, Washington says this. It's like, well, how did he know, right? He was in Yakima, Washington. He wasn't around any of this. So, if you don't do that, then you kind of have to, make it up the other way. You have to have two other people saying, yeah, right, this is, how I knew this. So, the crux of what they said, though, what they have denied or what they have had to correct is that that Rudy Giuliani received a defensive briefing saying that the stuff he was saying about the election and being thrown and so forth was Russian disinformation, right? This is the Russians attempted to give him disinformation. So you have to ask yourself, why didn't if they have this briefing prepared, why didn't they give it to him, right? Did they find out it wasn't true? Did they know it wasn't true all along? Did they want to see Rudy fall on his face and not do what they would have done for other Americans? So politics got played here. A, running a story with one anonymous source, and B, should they have given this briefing? Should they have given it, right? Should they have been looking at it this way? Why didn't they give him the briefing? So, there's a lot of questions left in this. And then, news organizations, of course, the irresponsibility of running a story like this, I want them to get punished as many times and as severely and thoroughly as they can until they stop doing it, because it really has done a lot to undermine the country in the last few years. Because the story everybody remembers. It's like I was on Twitter arguing with some people earlier about the Mueller investigation. They're like, well, the only reason Mueller didn't indict Trump is because of the president, the guidance you can't indict a president. That wasn't true. That's blatantly, patently, provably dishonest. But all the leftists think it, right? Because they didn't ever hear that, Barr called Mueller and said, you have it. And there was 240 DOJ appointee officials on the call. So when Mueller goes to testify to Congress, there was a judiciary hearing and a HPSC, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence hearing. At the judiciary hearing, Ted Lieu, liberal Democrat from California, asked him about this, and he said, "Yeah, no, we thought the opinion said we couldn't indict." And Mueller called him at lunch and said, "There's another hearing after lunch, and you better straighten that out. Or those 240 DOJ attorneys are going to be testifying that you misled what you heard in that conversation, right?" So, he comes out at the start of the HPSC hearing and says, "I want to clean up what I said there. I may have been misunderstood, and I did not decline to charge. It didn't have anything to do with the OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel guidance. So, saying that you can't charge a sitting president." So, I mean, the story still has legs. The correction, straightening it up, saying, "Oh yes, he could have charged." There were 6 or 7 liberals in there saying that this simply is not true. And I'm like, here's the tape. Just watch the tape. Because they never heard the backstory. They didn't keep following it. They heard what they wanted to hear and stopped listening.
All right, quickly, the final comment here I want from you, at least on this before we go to 2 minutes, is just that we heard this morning that the Facebook Oversight Board has basically upheld the Facebook decision to ban Trump from Facebook, though they did say that I guess Facebook violated its own rules, that they thought, I guess the permanent ban was something that they should look at again and maybe address. It's not a binding decision in any way, shape, or form to Facebook. Trump has, he's come up with his own way of, from the desk of Donald Trump platform, whatever that is.
Right. And
no one can post to it except for Trump. And then Mike Lind, his what's called Frank Speech platform, as well. I looked at it this morning. I said, so you have to give him your cell phone number, and then I guess they text you a code, and that gives you access to his site or whatever, and everything and all. So I don't know. I mean, your quick thoughts about Trump, Facebook platforms. What's going on?
Well, there was also a round of stories. I don't know if you saw it, of saying, "Oh boy, that really has quelled Trump's voice to not be on these social media platforms." Trump's voice is getting out there. You have the, House Republican caucus leader on the way out because she made Trump angry, right? And Trump is, in his first post on his, from the desk of Donald Trump, are bashing her, trying to get rid of her, right? So, I think that's an important battle for the party to have, right? It needs to repudiate the Bush era Republicanism as theory as thoroughly as it can, because that's losing talk. That's loser talk, and we'll never go back there again. Hopefully, thankfully. It's kind of interesting how all that's unfolded. I looked at Trump's thing. There's not a whole lot on it yet, but he has started off with that. He has a thing saying, this is a place where he can speak freely. Black Lives Matter has called for him to be deplatformed from any means of expression on the internet because, they're Americans and they like plurality and all voices heard and so forth.
Right.
So, it'll be interesting to see what comes of all that. I looked at Mike Lindell's thing briefly. That looks like it's a little more geared toward, letting the me's and you's of the world honk off on there and so forth. I'll probably check it out a little bit more. But to tell you the truth, this, for me personally, it loses interest if it's all people on my side. I lost interest in Parler for the same reason. It's like, yeah,
right.
Good tweet. It's like, thank you, but that's not really what you're doing there. You're making a case for something, and it's like if everyone already agrees with that case, it's sort of unnecessary.
Right. It's kind of like just having the person who called us bottom feeders. We're fine with that. We want that. If you get onto Parler and stuff like that, it's all the Me Too. I mean, it's all the same people. So there, it's the echo chamber that we would prefer not to be in per se for that. We like to have to do these changes and raise somebody's standard. All right. We're past 2 minutes, but do 2 minutes.
Oh gosh, I'm messing up again. Give me just a sec because I got one for you here. Where was this? I wanted to say about a couple of quick things. Charlie Crist has no chance against DeSantis. That's what are you doing? Who gives that guy money, right? Because at this point, you're going to get crushed. Caitlyn Jenner is against the transgender sports, against boys who have become girls, people who have done what she did, then going and competing against girls. So here's someone who knows what a good male athlete would do in a female competition, telling you, no, it's not fair. Don't do it, even though, I personally would be the person left out, right? So, it kind of tells you that, the people who can't compete, they're the ones trying to get this edge, right? I mean, and a lot of people, it is just getting an edge. I want to win the track meet. I don't want to finish 7th, right? I don't want to finish 7th either, but I'm real slow. And if there's 6 runners, I'm going to finish 7th. Adam Silver defending the NBA to China. It's like, well, they're not all terrible. Dude, you took the money. You're bribed. I think that one thing that we're going to see about how flexible Biden is, I do not understand why they turned down the Rolling Thunder or the Rolling to Remember, whatever it's called now. They said that Rolling Thunder, which, people in DC know about this, people elsewhere may not. On Memorial Day, all the vets who have motorcycles, it seems, come to DC and they ride through town, and there's events for them and so forth. And it's a lot of camaraderie, and it's a lot of, it's not a lot of trouble. Most of these people are older than me. They're, in their 60s or 70s and so forth. And, this year, the Pentagon told them they can't work it out. Trump, they tried to pull this on Trump a couple of years ago, and he's like, work this out, fellows. Call me when it is worked out. And so I could put out an announcement saying it was worked out. So, I expect that, if Biden wants to have any hope of walking in front of a veterans group in the next 2 years, that he will straighten this out too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I mean, that this is just, I
don't meanness.
I don't really think you can use COVID as much of an excuse anymore, because we've seen, you can have an event and you can be COVID safe. I mean,
and these guys, they're on their bikes with that shield of their motorcycle helmet on their face, right? This is not a super spreader event. This is.
I mean, whatever happened to the super spreader event of the Texas Rangers opening day, right, at full capacity? We're in much better shape than we were a year ago. Don't go down that. You've got to do this for COVID purposes. That's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, if Biden is going to be able to stand before a veterans group, this has got to be fixed.
Yeah,
and all of that. There's no doubt about it.
Stop listening to health people. They're politicized, and they're really their thing is done. They run their course.
Right. All right. We've reached the end. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And then God bless America, and we will see you again next week. And thanks, Bob, for joining us as always.